What up, everybody? Cauldron Decor, back out with another video. This one will be another rant video. I told you guys after my last top 10 worst games of all time video, kind of got the idea to do some more rant videos. So this one's going to be talking about 5 things in the current modern gaming industry that I personally don't like. This can include like trends, certain things that companies do to games, IPs, or developers. And we'll just summarize some of the things that I hope will change with the moving on to the next generation. If you have any more ideas for any like rant videos or certain topics you want me to cover, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'll try to get to some. I know a lot of people have been requesting hidden gems for the PS3. I have ordered my Elgato. It's coming, so once I get that in, I can start recording that, do a top 10 PS3 videos, do some hidden gem videos for the PS3, and get going on my top 10s list of all time. So those will be some videos coming up a little later. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So first off, I'm going to be talking about one of the ones that probably hits home for most people, especially people who've grown up with brothers or sisters, or friends that they like to come over and play a little bit of couch co-op with. And that is that couch co-op is basically being slowly eliminated from the gaming scene. It's really only being kept alive by certain indie games and games that already previously in the past had co-op, so they just keep it going through their franchise, like something like Halo or Borderlands. Back in older generations, games used to make an effort to include co-op, and it was one of the main selling points for a lot of games. Since the online services were either non-existent or not that great at the time around the PS2 like Xbox era, they focused more on the offline play and offline co-op and really tried to hone that in to make it part of the game, not just something that's tacked on at the end. Some personal examples for me are like Battlefront, the Crash Tag Team Racing games, or the Nitros games, a lot of the old school arcade racer games. You had the street football games, street basketball, Tony Hawk games even had a good PvP offline mode, and a lot of games put an effort in towards their offline multiplayer, just because of how important it was back then to be able to play with multiple people on the same game, or else you really didn't feel like you're getting the bang for the buck at the time. Nowadays, with how good internet is, how connected we are with globalization through the internet and stuff like that, companies have realized that you can make way more money by selling specifically for online multiplayer. The reason for this is that if, say, I don't know, I want to play COD with my friend, I have to get a console, he has to get a console, we both have to get a copy of the game, we both have to do online the gold or PlayStation Plus or PlayStation in order to be even able to play with each other. You're either forced to play multiplayer with your friends and buy all that stuff that I just mentioned, or you're either playing purely single player games like The Witcher and stuff like that, or there's not really that genre where a game can be played offline and co-op. Granted, there are some indie games or certain developers that are still catering towards this, but it's very few and it's dwindling as time goes on. There's just so much money that's made by multiplayer, and it just seems like that's where the focus is now, and not really on having people actually in your house playing games with each other and, you know, connecting that way. It seems to just all go digitally now. The main reason I think this is an issue is that it kind of limits gaming to one, people with good internet connection, if you want to play with a friend, or playing very specific niche genre of games. It also like basically takes out an element that was already in gaming and is slowly trimming it out. So we're losing a lot of what we can expect developers to put into their game. So it's just making it a lot easier for them to skim and half-ass stuff, which I'm not a fan of personally. Alright, now to the one that probably bugs me the most, and is the habit of companies now releasing games unfinished. So back then, like Xbox, PS2 era, GameCube era, PS1 era, anything before that, there was no online updates, obviously, because the internet was there or wasn't that strong to be able to do stuff like that on. So there was no really online updates and patch fixing your games as they kind of went on through its life cycle. The game had to be as good as you could possibly make it off the bat. So if it had glitches in it, it had glitches in it, and that would hurt the rep of your company. So really, game companies, and being that there was so many developers at the time, especially a lot of smaller developers, really had to focus on making sure it was a quality product before being launched and being revealed. Not just, oh, we have a timeline, let's meet that timeline and rush it. So it really felt more like there was a lot more effort put into the games. It wasn't just, oh yeah, we'll patch it later type thing. Nowadays, companies and developers have been bought out, so basically publishers control when stuff's getting released. So a prime example of this is Mass Effect, which I talked about was in my worst top 10 games of all time for the PS4, so it's not a great game. The main reason for this is that EA pushed BioWare to push it out on time, so it was filled with bugs. The story wasn't that good. It could have been fleshed out a lot more. It seems like it kind of drops off at the end, like they kind of wrote themselves into a certain spot and then realized, oh shit, we're almost out of time here, so they had to just push it on and get it out type thing. And really just felt like, compared to the original 3, it just felt unfinished and rushed throughout the whole entire game I was playing it. The biggest example of this is any game, especially on the computer for some reason, this happens a lot, is the early access games. The reason I put early access is because there's a difference between actual early access games and games that are early access. The games that are actually early access come out after a decent development time and really focus on continuing to update their game, and really it's a base game that they're getting feedback on, and they slowly make it into the actual full game and then release that full game with all of the taking in the help and input of the community. It's also just a way for companies that are smaller to test the waters of their games to see if it would even catch on and be worth continuing. Usually those games will be put out on an extreme discount, or they'll be put out free for now, and then there'll be a pay one when the game actually fully releases. Those I have no issues with. The ones I have are the AAA companies doing this, or companies that have a boatload of money and are still doing this. The biggest two examples that come to my mind on this is No Man's Sky. They didn't really do the early access thing, but they were so rushed in putting out this game that they basically released, I would say, a quarter of what they actually promised for the game. But since now they've had the time to actually put in stuff, and you can kind of view the early release as kind of an early access, because that's how it was. It was like an alpha version of what actually was to come, because right now apparently No Man's Sky has improved a lot. They've put in a lot of stuff that they were talking about, but it's only through feedback of the community and actually having that time to put out that quality product. So that's an example of a game that should have been early access. It should have been a lot cheaper, but a big development company or a relatively big indie company at the time basically said, hey, we still want to put the full price tag on this because we want to make a boatload of money. So that they get what they get, honestly, for that. Like, if you're rushing out your game, you're rushing out your game, and the public's going to tell you why with their wallet. The most egregious example of this that hits home to me personally is Mount & Blade Bannerlord. If any of you don't know, Mount & Blade series is a medieval third-person combat game on the PC. It's on the PS4 and Xbox as well, only the older one, not the current new one. The current new one is in early access, and it took 8 years of development to early access, and in early access they're like barely updating it. Glitchy as all heck, and they make you pay full price for it. They give you like a $10 discount, but it's still $49.99 for a game that is nowhere near that price tag. It's clearly just using the early access thing to basically say, oh yeah, we know the game is shit at the moment, but we'll tack on this early access thing so nobody can judge us, because it's basically saying, oh, well, it's early access, so we're not finished it yet, so you can't judge it yet. We're working on it. Like, no, you can't just slap the early access on it and expect people not to complain about the game. Like, if the game's bad, the game's bad. Like, early access doesn't excuse that at all. Alright, next one is the one that's probably talked about the most, and that is DLC, Battle Pass, and loot boxes. All that basically extra content that you have to pay to put into your game. In the past, before this all started, games basically made you either have all the content off the start, or games like old fighting games, certain sports games and stuff like that, would make you earn it by either playing through certain modes, beating certain teams, doing certain challenges, but the content would already be in the game, and you just unlock it by playing and beating certain things throughout the game. Nowadays, DLC is basically broken up into two sections. There's a single player DLC and the multiplayer DLC. So a single player DLC basically is, they make the entire game, They make the content for the DLC before the game even comes out, or have it mostly done before the game even comes out. Then they cut that part out of the game, and then they go, oh, you played through the whole game, and then like maybe a month or two later, they'll release the DLC for it, and it will be basically the content that already should have been in the game or is already made in the game, basically just cut out, and then you pay for that back. They don't change the game mechanics. It doesn't affect the story in major ways. There's no insane developments or crazy combat changes or anything like that. It's just more of the same, and you're paying probably $15 for about 3 hours of gameplay. There's only a very, very small percentage of games that manage to do this and make it worthwhile. Witcher would be one. Borderlands is usually pretty decent with their DLC, and the Fallout games. The reason why those ones are better compared to the other ones is that it's usually more of a bang for your buck. You're usually getting more hours out of it, and it's more quality content, and it actually adds a part to the story. It doesn't just feel cut out of the main one and just resold to you type thing. Alright, but single player gets it bad nowadays. The multiplayer just kind of just rammed with it. Like, basically your whole online experience is just DLC, DLC, DLC. Here's this new pack. Here's this new pack. Here's this new pack. Look, DLC, DLC, DLC. Oh, you want to buy this? And sometimes even games will, when you're loading into the multiplayer section, be like, new bundle, click to skip. New bundle, click to skip. And you have to like force your way through all the DLC ads that they're putting. So right now, there's really two ways this is being done. The first one is still through the loot box system, which is kind of the old one that everybody's beating the dead horse, loot box bad type thing. But I'll touch on it for a bit. Loot boxes are basically gambling in a game. They basically give you a random chance to get something either good or really bad, and usually it's really bad. And then like occasionally, probably like 1 in every 10, you'll get something decent. Certain games do these okay. Blizzard games usually are alright with them, with decent drop rates, and you get them for free by just playing type thing. Certain games like CSGO, were really loot boxes popped off on, along with TF2. They're paid crates that you have to buy a key in order to unlock the crate. So that's more of the scummy way to do it, because it forces basically a false rarity system with it, and also was made just to force the Steam community market in order to get a bunch of money from people. The main issue with these things is that really you just don't know if you're getting what you paid for, because you could be paying $3 to $5 for the key or whatever it is, the loot box, the crates and stuff like that, and then usually get like 70 cents worth of something in-game item wise. So it's usually not worth it, and it really commits itself to the gambling aspect, and kind of has that bad vibe you get like at a casino or something like that. Now that system is kind of dying off in terms of how much it's used. It's still used, but definitely not as much as this current system that is coming to being the overseer of loot boxes, and that is the Battle Pass system. So this really started with Fortnite, and you see it in games like Dead by Daylight, Call of Duty, Valorant I'm pretty sure has one as well. League of Legends I think has one now. It's basically you pay a set price and you have the ability to unlock a bunch of stuff. So the key with this, and why I think it's personally worse than loot boxes, is that you pay a set price, you guaranteed like 2 to 3 things that aren't that good. All the good stuff is locked in the last like 25 levels out of like the 100 levels you gotta play, and basically they force you to either stick with their game throughout the entire season in order to get the stuff that you want on the Battle Pass, or say you get to like 45, you haven't been playing too much, but there's a skin you really want at 90. You have to pay an increment of insane amount of money. It's like $2 per level to level up from 45 to 90. You have to pay for each level to get to that, to be able to unlock the skin, because you didn't play enough. And it's not like you play like 25 hours throughout the time that you'll get the thing. You have to put in a solid amount of hours into this. So you have to be really sure when you're buying a Battle Pass that you're willing to spend all that time in the game. The other main issue with Battle Pass system is that they also create these shops along with the Battle Pass system. So there's the Battle Pass section where you buy that, and then there's items that are specifically only in the shop. So the shop items will be like $10 for a skin or something like that, because they can charge insane amounts for it, because they're technically the rarer ones, because they're only in the shop for limited times or it's a special event. The one big for this is Fortnite, with they have Travis Scott come in. Oh my gosh, I gotta buy the Travis Scott. Oh my gosh, there's a Star Wars thing. Gotta buy the Star Wars skin type thing. So you spent like $10 on one skin, like type thing, which is an insanely fluctuated price compared to what you look at the Battle Pass for. So basically what Battle Passes do, and why I despise them, is that they basically create a false rarity system. So the items in the shop that are exclusive for a certain amount of time will become rare and sought after. So everybody who sees it in the shop for that, whatever, 24 hours when it's available will purchase it. And they're insanely inflated prices, because they look at, the company can basically say, oh, we have a Battle Pass system, so that's really affordable for the amount of stuff you get for that, so we can charge extra for the shop. Well, really, they're just boning you on the Battle Pass because of how much time you got to put into it, and they're boning you on the shop by raising the price of it and making them insanely expensive for stuff that shouldn't be that expensive at all. Alright, the next thing is probably the saddest one I want to be talking about in terms of how it affects the gaming industry and the culture of gaming, and that is the killing off of IPs, or buying out rivals and then basically just tanking their franchises on purpose to make your own franchises flourish, or basically just killing off the market and killing off competition so you can basically run wild with your game. The main culprit for this throughout history has been EA. Basically any of their old companies that worked on some of the more successful games during their early Xbox and PS2 days, when they were kind of up here, or basically canned those IPs in terms of the ones that focus more on multiplayer, like their sports games and the Battlefront game. So basically big companies like EA and other companies, not just EA, but they're the one that comes to mind most when talking about this, is they basically have a bunch of IPs that they have tons of fans for, and tons of fans that would love to play these games and love to experience the continuation of these games, which clearly deserve some sort of continuation. And they basically shelve them because they're not on trend right now. They're not those multiplayer games that you can create battle passes, loot boxes, extra DLC for, customization stuff that people gotta buy. They don't have those extra, you don't get the extra dollar amount after you play the game. You only get the initial purchase price. So for EA, that's games like the SSX games, the Skate games, which I know some of you will say Skate's coming back, but the only reason Skate's coming back is because the Tony Hawk series is releasing an HD remaster of 1 and 2 of Pro Skater. And EA saw all the people that were like jonesing for that, and people that were willing to buy that, and the excitement around that. So they're like, oh crap, we can make money off this as well. Wait, people actually want these? Like, it kind of like just got like shot in their head or something like that, like rocketed in there, the light bulb went off, like, and they were like, oh, well, we can make a crap load of money on this, so now I actually put it out. Yeah, you can have the green light to do what you want, Skate developer. The other thing that's probably the worst part of this, and not just companies that already own the IPs shelving them, it's when they buy out rivals or competitors' IPs, or small-ish companies' IPs, just to tank them. A prime example of this would be the Mass Effect Dragon Age franchises, where EA bought out BioWare and then basically changed how the gameplay was supposed to be and manipulated the story in enough of a way and forced them on a timeline that was too quick for BioWare to make a quality game on, and then basically just tanked both of the series in terms of quality. The Dragon Age wasn't that bad, it was a decent game still, but Mass Effect like tanked the series. I don't even know if they'll make another one. There's just been so many companies just butchered off by this slow monopoly game of all of these companies that are like the top echelons, like Ubisoft, EA, 2K, and just basically those top elite companies. That's all that's left, really. And it's really sad because there's so many quality games and quality like smaller franchises or cult classics that we'll just never see new games for, unless for some reason an insane amount of hype just brings them back. Alright, so this one kind of piggybacks off of the last one I talked about, and I mentioned it for a bit, and that's monopoly. So what a monopoly is, for those who don't know, it's basically when one company owns a share or a huge stake in a certain business line, certain type of business, that they basically dominate the entire market. An example of this outside of gaming would be Walmart. They basically own the whole superstore thing. So in gaming recently, there's two types of monopolies that have started. So the first type is genre monopolies. So this is when a company owns the entire stake, or basically the entire stake, in a certain genre, and there are certain franchises or games that dominate that, and there's no competition in it. The biggest blaring example of this is sports games, where like EA owns the entire Madden scene and the football scene, and the soccer scene, along with PES, who's kinda there but not really. Where 2K owns the entire basketball game series. Like, they're the only ones that put out basketball games nowadays. And this is partly due to the licensing deals that these companies have made with the respective like NBA and NFL, which really have just limited and chokehold that genre into everybody who wants to play that genre and having to play these games. Another example of this would be like shooters and stuff like that, where COD, Battlefield, and whatever popular like CSGO adaptation is at the time, like Valorant or CSGO, basically owns the market at the time. Basically anything that wants to come out as competition is either slowly drummed out due to not making enough money, or basically their player base is so small in comparison to other games that people want to go to the games that everybody else is playing, that their friends are playing. So there's just such a domination by the market. The issue for this is that it allows companies, and especially in certain genres, to basically shoehorn in bad ideas that would never fly with consumers if there was multiple different choices. But since there's no other choices in the genre and they're forced to do this, they can basically put in whatever they want and consumers have to deal with it. The biggest example going back to the basketball games is 2K. They basically added in online casinos, made it so to upgrade your players it's insanely expensive, and like clothing options, customizing your character is all locked behind paywalls that you have to pay virtual coins, which can also be bought as well. If there was actual competition in the market, and at least they're 2K games, because nobody would want to play that and everybody's already getting tired of the amount of microtransactions that are in those games. But since they are literally the only ones in that market, they can do whatever the fuck they want, because what else are people going to play? No basketball games? People make money off of playing basketball games, or really enjoy playing basketball games with their friends, to create teams, do the My Leagues and stuff together. So basically with no other competition on the market, 2K can do whatever they want and people are going to buy it. All this basically goes hand in hand with the second type of monopoly, and that is the publisher and developer monopoly. I've touched about this partly in the video already, but it's basically there's so little publishers and developers compared to back in the day, and it basically just creates this ability for big publishers and companies to make some mistakes, release games too early, release games unfinished, put in a bunch of microtransactions, and basically get no backlash for it besides initially. Like, it's basically they can put in a bunch of microtransactions and stuff like that. People get mad about it for maybe a week or two, and then after that, basically people just forget about it, and since they're the only companies there, the next game they just make a decent bit better and don't do that, and then everybody forgets about the other thing. It's just there's such a domination on the market that they can do whatever they want and get away with it. So that wraps up my video. Hope you guys enjoy the rant videos. I enjoy making them. I think they're fun to make, so I might make a couple more in the future. So thanks for watching. If you have any other things that possibly could be on this list, or in your least favorite things currently done in video games, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and remember, everybody has some nerdiness at their core.